Welcome to Match Play here on the High School Roundup set for this Friday, February 8th. And today, joining me is Creighton Ravs and Cody Jeanette. Cody, the first timer here. Guys, how's it feel to be here?
Not too bad.
I'm ready to get this show on the road, Zach. Let's do it.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun, enticing matchup today. So let's get it going. Our first topic for Cal U, women's basketball. Their last game against Edinburgh, they lost 60-41. So Creighton, why don't you tell me about that game and looking ahead to Gannon?
Well, you're not going to win games if you're shooting 12% from the field in the second half. I don't care if it's against Edinburgh or Gannon or whomever. That's ultimately what killed the Vulcans in this last game. Looking ahead to Gannon, you're talking about the sixth best team in all of D2. Their only losses were to the number one team in the country in Ashland. And their other loss was to Edinburgh at Edinburgh. This is going to be a very formidable challenge for the Vulcans, especially when you're trying to stop Jennifer Papich, which is a heck of a lot easier said than done. So, I mean, California's going to have their work cut out for them. And then, on Wednesday, you have to go to Indiana. So it's going to be a rough slog for them.
Well, Zach, naturally, I'm sure you can talk about this from experience. Every team in any sport, no matter what it is, they go through hot times and cool times. And right now, I feel that California's women's basketball team is in a little bit of a cool time. And as Creighton said, they didn't have their best performance in their previous game, or their previous two games, mind you, and which resulted in losses. But it's only a matter of time before they jump back onto their high point as they were before then. You know, with Stephanie Michael laying down those threes all over the place. You know, it's only a matter of time before they jump back up and get really hot again and start winning some games.
And if you're talking about that other game, they actually beat Mercyhurst last Saturday, so.
Yeah, it was a big win at the MAC for the women's team. Now moving on to the other side, the men's team, they came off a thrilling victory at Edinburgh. Late free throws to win it from Quentin Harding. Cody, why don't you tell me about that game, and now looking to Gannon again.
Thriller games are always fun to watch, no matter who's playing or what team you're supporting. It's always nail biters to the end. I've always preferred nail biters personally rather than all-out blowouts, unless it's your team that's blowing the other team out, of course. But you know, during that game, as you said, the free throws to win it came up clutch at the very end. And looking ahead, it's going to be a really tough game as the rest of the season is looking out for this men's basketball team. And they're going to have to deliver during those clutch opportunities, during those free throws, hitting baskets from inside the key, outside the three-point line, wherever they get the nearest possible opportunity, and it will help them strive towards another victory should they end up getting one against Gannon.
And overlooked in all this, you were mentioning the foul shooting. I mean, it kind of came into play last Saturday at Mercyhurst. Of course, to be fair, you know, it's kind of hard to play on the road when it's 5-on-8. We'll leave it at that. That said, the Edinburgh game, I think this is as big a gut check as it was, as the game against Clarion was at home last week. The good teams will always find a way to win down the stretch. The Vulcans won down the stretch at Edinburgh. They held off a very good team, and the reason that Mercyhurst loss really still stings, I mean, Cal beats Mercyhurst last Saturday. They're tied for fourth place, and they hold the tiebreakers over Edinburgh. So that's sweeping the Fighting Scots. That's going to come in handy.
Yeah, like you said, they would hold the tiebreaker for fourth, but they still have a lot of games left in the season against the PSAC West. So let's see what they can do with those other games. Maybe they can steal a home playoff game coming up. Now moving on to a different sport in the Cal U region. Baseball season starting here. First game was rescheduled for next Friday due to some inclement weather. But Creighton, why don't you tell me about the baseball team and how they're looking going into the season?
Well, they were picked third in the PSAC West coaches poll, so you have a key player returning, Kyle Petty. So at least offensively, you're going to be fine there. You got a solid starting rotation, and you have to bear with me. I'm being new to the area. You don't quite know all the players and all that, but you take a look at the PSAC landscape in baseball as a whole. I mean, Mercyhurst is going to be formidable in the West. Slippery Rock, who came in second in the poll, they're going to be very formidable. It's going to be, just like it is in every other sport in this league, it's going to be a very it's going to be challenging for the Vulcans. And even if you look at the East, I mean, remember, you still, if it gets to playoff time, you got Westchester defending national champions looming. So it'll be a tough slog, I think.
And Zach, the most important thing here when you're looking at preseason play is chemistry. You said the team has to come together and be able to fulfill each important aspect, and you have the good starting rotation, you have those good offensive players coming back, and without that chemistry, your baseball team is as of nothing. And I can recall through my years here at Cal U, I've heard so many great things about this baseball team, that they're a very strong team as it is, so hopefully they can keep that chemistry up, and then they'll be able to push towards a playoff race or clinch the PSAC West if they can.
Yeah, chemistry is very important in baseball for returning starting pitchers this year, so let's see how the Cal U baseball team can do this year in the PSAC. Now moving on to our fan topic, we still don't have one today, so I'll throw one in there, but you can log on to facebook.com/CUTV and submit a fan topic for us to answer here on the show. So my fan topic for you two today is, who is your favorite Cal Vulcan athlete to watch in person and why? And Cody, I'll start with you.
Zach, I'm going to have to go with Stephanie Michael of the Cal U women's basketball team. She is just such a dominant force out there on the court, and in games that I have either announced or produced for CUTV, just watching her play, she's offensively present everywhere, and on defense, she's very good at communicating with her teammates. And did I mention the three-point shooting that she has? That ability is just so outstanding for her, and she has been one of the really biggest offensive players for that women's basketball team.
I think I'm going to pick a male athlete and a female athlete. My male athlete would be Tynell Fortune, because you get a little man coming off the bench, he's draining threes, he's getting it done at the foul line. It's an absolute thrill to watch. Now, on the women's side, I'm going to go a little bit off the board here. I mean, Steph Michael, don't get me wrong, great choice, but probably my favorite athlete to watch here at Cal U would be Ashley Magruder, the goalie for the women's soccer team, the nationally ranked women's soccer team, I might add. Local girl from Bell Vernon, and I'll tell you what, you watch her play in goal in the net, she's definitely Mon Valley tough. She'll take those licks and she'll bounce right back up like she's a hockey player. It's that kind of blue collar work ethic I like. You know, I've lived in the eastern part of Pennsylvania, and that's kind. And I know a little bit about blue collar work ethic and such. So she just has that personality on the field that fits.
Yeah, great choices there. I think for myself, I'd have to go Keith Lowe. Just a beautiful shot right there. Well, the first segment, first round, is now over. Not very choppy here between the two competitors, but now we're going to move on to our Pittsburgh regional topics right here on Match Play after the break.
I can remember Magruder getting...
We want you to feel the beat right here. We want a sound that's oh so clear. We want you to feel the beat right here. Raise your hands and everybody sing.
And welcome back to Match Play. Now moving on to our Pittsburgh regional topics. The first segment wasn't very competitive between our two competition here today. Let's see if things get a little more antsy and dicey as we move on. The first topic we're going to talk about, the Pittsburgh Pirates. Spring training right around the corner, starts next week, and they make a late signing that I think is going to be great for them. Jonathan Sanchez, the left-handed pitcher. Creighton, why don't you tell me more about this team?
Well, Jonathan Sanchez, first of all, he signed to a minor league contract, and to be perfectly honest, he hasn't had the best stretch of the last couple years. But I mean, it couldn't hurt to at least give him an opportunity to make the big league roster. Now you look at look at who else we have in the rotation. Burnett's coming back. If James McDonald can be first half J-Mac and not second half J-Mac, and you get Wandy Rodriguez for a full season, I'm confident with our starting rotation. I like Grilly as our closer. Gonna miss Hanrahan, don't get me wrong, but I mean you got somebody competent filling in, and of course Kutch, a healthy Neil Walker. If Starling Marte can stay healthy, I mean, I like this team's chances to actually have a winning season.
Now, Zach, I'm going to have to disagree with you a little bit, saying that was a good signing. I mean, don't get me wrong, he does have a little bit of a potential to bounce back, as Creighton said. But he threw the no-hitter in 2009, and then in 2010 he had one of his best seasons ever. However, during the past couple years, he's really slumped down. He's gotten older. Age has really gotten to him. He's of 30 years of age now. So he's starting to get a little on the older side, but that doesn't necessarily work out for the worst for some players. But in my personal opinion, I do believe that it will not work out in his favor should he sign back with the Pirates. And the Pirates just themselves have had a really bad rap for the past 20 years when it comes to pitching.
Yeah, like you said, throwing the no-hitter, generally a lot of pitchers, they start to fall off after getting the no-hitters, the perfect games. Let's see. I think it's a low-risk, high-reward kind of guy, pitching with the Giants during the World Series run, so let's see what he can do for the Pirates. Now moving on to the Pittsburgh Penguins, who have won 5 in a row after their victory last night. Chris Kunitz was named second star of the week for the NHL, dating back to last week's games. He had 8 points, 5 goals, 4 of them in one game. So Cody, why don't you tell me about his performance and what he's meaning to this team?
Chris Kunitz, wow, he has got to be the #1 example, and if not, he's definitely up there, of that one name doesn't make the team. The Penguins aren't all about Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin and Marc-Andre Fleury like everybody thinks that they are. So people like Chris Kunitz in particular are really stepping up offensively and scoring those points, scoring those goals and assists. And there was a few games where he didn't necessarily score any goals. However, he had quite a few assists, so he helped out on those goals, which is just as important as scoring them. So he may not be the sharpest shooter, but he's definitely one of the best people to assist those sharpshooters in leading the Penguins to their victories.
And one thing about Kunitz is it also helps that you're on a line with Sidney Crosby, because Sidney Crosby, I mean, he's been dishing out assists as if they were candy the last couple of weeks. So, but getting back to Kunitz, I mean, it's just, I think it goes to your point. It shows that this is not a two-horse team. 3 if you want to count Fleury. I mean, and in the overall scheme of things, it's not just Kunitz who's stepping up. Paul Martin has been playing a lot better than he has been last year. Although the one red flag right now is you got to find out how long Crystal Tang is going to be out with his injury, because that defense, obviously, a big liability last year for them in the playoffs. But that said, again, it's just great to see Kunitz stepping up.
Yeah, Kunitz has been producing. I know one of our own, Allison Steinheiser, is happy about that. He's on her fantasy team. But a couple other guys you mentioned, Crystal Tang, I think is a day-to-day injury, so we'll see how that affects the defense going on. Now moving on to the other big team in the city of Pittsburgh, the Pittsburgh Steelers. Offseason has started. They've gotten rid of Chris Rainey after his arrest. And there's still some other key guys on their team that might be coming back and might not. So Creighton, why don't you tell me about those guys that you think should be re-signed or let go?
As for who should be let go, I think, James Harrison. I hate to say this may not be the most popular opinion in Pittsburgh, but I think you're probably going to see James Harrison gone. Mendenhall, I think his time is up. Mike Wallace, don't let the door hit you on the way out. I mean, those are the 3 big names right off the top of my head that I think you won't be seeing wearing black and gold for the Steelers next year. But at the same time, you hear talk about Ryan Clark may not be coming back. I mean, I definitely want to keep 2-5 back there. You hear Brett Kiesel. He's someone I'd absolutely love to see back next year. This is not a bad team. They've just been beset by bad luck and injuries.
Zach, I agree with Creighton in saying that James Harrison should be one of the people to get released, because he's nowhere near as dominant as he was during his first few years and jumping over the line and getting those sacks and all of that. But also on the defensive side, I'm going to have to go and state a probably not so popular opinion, but Troy Polamalu has becoming more of a reliability than he's worth, in my opinion. Don't get me wrong, this past year he has had one of his better years, but the past couple years before that, you only saw him, half the season, maybe less. He's always been plagued with an injury. And on the offensive side, I'll just mention real quick here, you need to work on those running backs. Mendenhall is probably going to get going, and Chris Rainey, of course, there's a lot to be filled there.
Yeah, running backs, like you said, John Dwyer, I grew up near him, repping my hometown for him. But the defense, James Harrison, like you said, he's getting old. Troy Polamalu even too injury-plagued for the team to keep him around. Well, now moving to the collegiate level in football, National Signing Day was a few days ago, and one guy that astounded me with where he's going, Christian Hackenberg, the #1 quarterback prospect in the land, chose to go to Penn State even after their sanctions were laid down on them. Cody, why don't you tell me more about him?
Boy, I'll tell you what, Zach, this is something that Penn State absolutely needed. They needed something to get their offensive, or excuse me, not their offensive program, but their whole football program in general kicked back into gear. They really needed a star quarterback or a star wide receiver, strong safety, what have you, any position at all, and they had to get a new quarterback, as we saw with Hackenberg signing there. And with Bill O'Brien choosing to remain to stay there, it's definitely going to jumpstart this team once again and get them back into shape and become another force in the Big Ten.
In theory, you wonder why the top quarterback prospect will be going to Penn State even after all of this has gone down. But keep this in mind. 2013 is going to mark the second year of the Penn State sanctions. You're going to have 2 more years after that. By that time, Hackenberg is going to be a junior or a senior, depending on if he redshirts next year. I would suspect he probably will redshirt next year. By the time these sanctions are lifted, who's to say Penn State's not going to be a national power? Again, even if they're not going to the bowl games, they're still going to be building something. And if Hackenberg can develop the way Bill O'Brien thinks he can, Penn State might surprise a few people by the time 2016, 2017 comes around.
Yeah, I think the big thing there, Bill O'Brien, he coached Tom Brady. If you're the #1 quarterback prospect, you'll see that and love it immediately. And I think Penn State will surprise a couple people, maybe win a national title in a couple years, in my opinion. Well, that's it for the Pittsburgh regional topics. Getting a little bit more amped up here as we go on. National topics are coming up next. We're going to talk about America.
CUTV is always on the air online. Like us on Facebook for upcoming events and status updates. Follow us on Twitter at CUTV_PA for behind-the-scenes exclusives. For streaming news and sports coverage, subscribe to our YouTube channels. CUTV social media. It's always online.
Back to match play here. Now we're in round 3, the American national topics. And there's been not as much big news lately in this week, but a couple key pieces to teams that could be beneficial to some and detrimental to the ones that hurt them the most. And first off, Chris Carpenter, the pitcher for the St. Louis Cardinals, coming back during the 2012 playoffs, pitched pretty well. Now it comes to find out he's missing the entire 2013 season. So, Creighton, why don't you tell me how that's going to affect the Cardinals going on?
I don't think it will, quite frankly. I mean, like you were alluding to, Chris Carpenter missed pretty much most of the 2012 season with injuries. The Cardinals didn't exactly fall to the bottom of the National League Central. I don't see his injury being that significant in the overall scheme of things when you're talking about the Cardinals. That being said, though, I mean, until someone can take them down, I still say the Cardinals are going to be one of the teams to beat in the Central. Of course, you also have Cincinnati lurking around there, Milwaukee, depending on whether or not Ryan Braun is still going to be eligible after his little controversy. I mean, but like I said, in the overall scheme of things, I mean, it didn't hurt him that bad last year, won't hurt him this year.
I have to agree with Creighton there on Carpenter's injury itself not really affecting the Cardinals that much because they have a lot more offensive and defensive weapons to carry them through the season and into the postseason. But I do believe that it's going to affect the other teams in the National League Central more than the Cardinals themselves. Mm-hmm. With this strong of a pitcher being gone for the 2013 season, it's going to give the other teams in the National League Central more opportunities for their offenses to capitalize against this Cardinal team unless their pitching also undergoes another big revamp and is able to stand up stronger and make up for Carpenter's absence. But you got so many offensive powerhouses in the National League Central, it'll be a heated battle.
Yeah, the Cardinals, you're going to have Adam Wainwright back for the second season after Tommy John. I think he's going to be a lot better. Like you said, the other teams in the NL Central, Pirates, Reds, Brewers, they're becoming offensive powerhouses. I think they're going to do well this season against the Cardinals pitching staff. Now moving on, Meta World Peace, the artist formerly known as Ron Artest, is back in the news after some scuffles during an NBA game, this time recently punching Brandon Knight in the face. Now, Cody, why don't you tell me about how his image is still kind of bleakened after the brawl in the Auburn Hills in 2004?
Well, it's very obvious there's going to be a dark cloud looming over his head throughout his whole entire career now because of this. But, I mean, come on, this kind of thing is just really uncalled for in professional sports. It's disrespectful. It's disrespectful to not only your teammates or the other team, but also the officials and the coaches as well. And the fact that this type of thing has happened more than once is not cool at all to look at. It's not one of the biggest things that you want to have under your belt. Like if you're looking for future trades or future teams to play for, and oh yeah, I had 2 little scuffles in the NBA. Yeah, that's not going to go over so well.
Guess what? Well, first of all, once a knucklehead, always a knucklehead. That pretty much sums up my opinion of Ron Artest. I can't bring myself to call him by his new name, so be that as it may. Look at in the overall scheme of things. How many years left does Ron Artest legitimately have in the NBA? Probably not many. And it's bad enough you have the malice at the Palace in 2004. If I'm not mistaken, this little Donnybrook took place against Detroit. It's not going to win you too many fans. History repeats itself with this guy. And what exactly has he done for the Lakers? Not really a lot, but then again, what have the Lakers done this year? They've stunk.
Yeah, Lakers not doing so well as a team, and Meta World Peace having a couple scuffles, the elbow to Harden's face, and now Brandon Knight and the brawl in the Auburn Hills. So maybe the Lakers look to trade him later in the season. Who knows, as they're trying to make the push for the playoffs. Now moving on, National Signing Day, big day for high school athletes and colleges everywhere as kids fulfill their dream of playing college football for some big name talent. And there are a few names that surprised us all and a couple that stayed where they should have. So, Creighton, why don't you tell me about one team that you think stood out the most on National Signing Day?
Well, it would be easy to just automatically say, oh, Alabama, because they're the defending national champions. My feeling is the team that really made out well was the Ohio State University. You have a team that's coming off a perfect season, even though they couldn't play in a bowl game because of Jim Tressel's shenanigans that he may not have been responsible for, but he was coaching a team. It's on him, his watch. But you look at the talent the Buckeyes brought in. If they had a lot of holes that they filled up last year, you bring in some even more talent, especially at wide receiver and at quarterback. If I'm Nick Saban and I got to face Ohio State in the title game, I'd be nervous, very nervous.
Zach, I'm going to have to go with Ole Miss on this one. Mm-hmm. Ole Miss may not have necessarily had the best National Signing Day, however, they did have one of the most impressive ones. You take a look, there were so many gaps within their team that they needed to fulfill, and they were gaps that were also in high demand with the rest of the SEC. And Ole Miss was able to score, I think it was 3 or 4 5-star guys or 4-star guys, and fill in all of those holes on their roster. And once they can get a little bit of time, build that chemistry back up together, they're definitely going to be one of the more dominant forces in the conference after having the best people fulfill their holes.
Yeah, I like your comment about Ohio State, Creighton. If they went undefeated last season and they get more talent, what can they do this year, even though they're still under some sanctions with Urban Meyer and Braxton Miller, a dynamic duo at the Horseshoe. Now moving on to the national football scene, Super Bowl 47 has been concluded. The Ravens won it all, as to chagrin to some Steelers fans here. But Super Bowl 48 is less than a year away now, and we have to start looking at the favorites to get to that game. Las Vegas has already put out their odds to get to the title game. So Cody, why don't you tell me your 2 favorites to get to the Super Bowl?
Well, it's a jump ball when you take a look at it. I mean, there have been so many teams stepping up and stepping up and being strong in their conferences, how Baltimore was in the AFC North this year. For the AFC, it's always a safe bet to go with New England. You got Tom Brady. He's getting a lot of experience, and he's going to be really strong and towards probably his final years of his career. And for the NFC, I'm going to have to go with the underdog Atlanta that was in here this past year. I'll be honest. They were in my Super Bowl prediction for this year. I really thought they were going to go far. They were that team that kind of flew under the radar and surprised everybody. They're definitely going to be a really dominant force next year.
First of all, let me just start off by saying there is no way Baltimore is going to repeat, because the thought of seeing a repeat of Joe Flacco holding a Super Bowl trophy is enough to make me throw up in my mouth. That said, I think Denver is going to be in the mix, probably more so than New England. You look at the way Peyton Manning has really gotten that offense going. If it weren't for a couple coaching blunders by John Fox, I think we'd be talking about a Broncos Super Bowl win instead of those Ratbirds. In the NFC, I think it's going to be a little more of a toss-up. You can't have a discussion without San Francisco. I think the Giants, it's really nobody in the NFC East except maybe New York might have a shot, but I'd say right now I'll go with Denver and San Fran.
Yeah, those are good picks right there, guys. You're up in my hometown team, the Atlanta Falcons. Myself, fans' opinion right there. I'm going with the Steelers against the Seahawks. Repeat Super Bowl 40 from 8 years ago. Well, that's all for match play here. Now the decision is up to you, the fans, as I'm no longer picking the winner here. You must log on to facebook.com/CUTV, find the poll, find the link, watch the video, and vote for who you think won today's matchup and match play. And guys, quickly to wrap things up, how was your experience today? Cody, we'll start with you.
Great. Simply put, great.
Man, a few words. I like that. I'm looking forward. I was looking forward to this all week, and I'm just glad it's over.
Yeah, your second straight Friday here. Creighton starting to become a Friday starter for college baseball team, kind of. But that's all for us here today on Match Play. We'll see you next time here from the High School Roundup set.